It's now 9:01, and I'd like to welcome you to our InnoFactor webinar. The title is Build and Deploy AI, Customize Your Cloud Infrastructure to Support Microsoft Copilot Studio and Azure OpenAI applications. So I'm going to lead in now to the presentation and introduce our panelists for today. But first, I just want to say a little bit about InnoFactor. For those of you who don't know InnoFactor, we are one of the Nordic region's leading Microsoft partners. We have around 500 specialists across Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. And for the last 20 years, we've been working across all areas of Microsoft technology and innovation, and are now focusing very much on artificial intelligence. We're listed on the Helsinki Stock Exchange, and the company has a robust business, and our industry expertise covers finance, insurance, shipping, logistics, healthcare, and education. And we have also a strong interest in partnerships in sustainability and circular economy. And as a Microsoft-focused company, we've achieved the highest solutions partner for Microsoft Cloud designation by completing all 7 MCPP designations. So the solution designations are Cloud, Infra, Digital and App Innovation, Data and AI, Business Applications, Security, and Modern Work. We also have 4 Microsoft specializations: Infrastructure and Database Migration to Azure, Modernization of Web Applications to Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Modern Work Adoption and Change Management, and lastly, Microsoft Identity and Access Management. So we work across 6 main solution areas, and these actually harmonize well with the solution partner areas within Microsoft. So the solution areas we cover are basically what you need in order to build a framework for a modern digital organization. And we cover end-to-end solutions. So for example, a secure data platform built on a secure landing zone in Azure with full managed service support and CyberSOC on board. So in addition to working as consultants, we also develop our own solutions, enterprise integration platforms, case management software, and data and automation processes. So that's basically InnoFactor, for those of you who don't know us. And now I'd like to introduce the 4 of us who will be your panel today. Beginning with my colleague Morten, based here in Oslo. Morten is a principal consultant and specializes in an area we call modern work. He's an expert in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and particularly for the last 12 months has been working extensively with all aspects of Copilot. We were one of the first companies to roll out Copilot in Norway, and we've now amassed quite a lot of experience in that area, and this has been led by Morten. Damien is one of our most senior Microsoft valued professionals, and he is an enterprise architect specializing in infrastructure. So Damien and I work closely together. Joshua is based in Helsinki and is a product manager for an area which is growing fast within InnoFactor, which is InnoFactor GPT agents. And his experience over the last few months has been also significant in terms of actually working on solutions that involve the use of AI agents. And myself, as I said, I'm an enterprise architect. I specialize in business process design and cloud advisory services. So this is the agenda we're going to cover today. So I'm going to lead in with just a short overview of some of the things that have been happening in the markets around AI recently. giving some clues as to where we are now and where we're heading. Then we're going to lead into a presentation of Copilot 365, which we're positioning as a kind of a gateway to AI productivity, both for individuals and teams. Then we're going to move beyond the scope of 365 and look at AI, which isn't linked to the Microsoft 365 graph. So beyond the 365 graph, we are introducing the Azure AI framework. And Joshua will be taking us through RAG models, what they are, how to use them, process and storing data, some of the issues that need to be navigated when working with client projects, and how to get good results working with clients on these early Azure AI projects. Then we're going to focus on the role of infrastructure, which Damien will be leading, and basically explain some of the foundational elements and components within Azure Infrastructure, and how these can be seen as prerequisites for successful AI projects. So hopefully you will find this both valuable and interesting. We'll have a short discussion. Can AI provide a long-term competitive advantage? And throughout this presentation, we'll also be inviting you to participate in polls. So we have, I think we have 6 questions which we'll be fielding to you through the meeting. And it would be great if you could just give us your opinion based on where you are now in terms of your current work and plans, and any opinions you have on some of the questions we'll be putting to you. What we're also going to do is Damien is also going to present our Cloud AI Infrastructure Sandbox. Now, this sandbox will also be available to webinar participants after the event. So this is a resource which will accelerate your ability to start experimenting with AI, and provides you with an infrastructure environment that you can adapt into your existing Azure subscription. So that's the agenda for today, and so let's begin by just considering kind of where we are in AI. AI is everywhere. It's all over the news. It's somewhat hard to separate the hype from the reality. Many different conversations about how close we are to artificial general intelligence, whether the latest generation of agents really can think. Some questions which are sending different signals as to where we may be going. This is a report that came out earlier in the year. It's the 3rd Nordic State of AI report. And this is, I think, a good report in terms of explaining roughly where the Nordic region is in terms of making progress and dealing with challenges in AI adoption across the Nordic region. So some of the key findings here are that there's clearly increased commitment and investment from Nordic companies across all sectors. So no surprise there. And the overall adoption of AI continues to rise, along with increasing investments in development. But there are also, despite this acceleration, there are also clear signs that there is a need for improvement in certain areas. And there are 3 themes that come out very clearly across the Nordic region. The first is a need to pursue industrial large-scale adoption of AI. So finding bigger AI projects to work with, projects that have more meaningful business outcomes. Talent acquisition, of course, as you'd expect, is an important theme, and finding people with the right experience who can either be trained up or who can bring their experience over, perhaps from another company or from consulting into client-side operations. That's clearly a challenge for many organizations. There aren't that many people with the talent, the existing skill sets needed. So the war for talent is very real in AI. And another area which is pointed up and which I think is relevant for this webinar today is investments in AI infrastructure. So there seems to be a limited understanding of the infrastructure prerequisites or the foundations that you need in order to successfully scale up AI for operations. So that's hopefully what we can fill in some gaps on today. So another area that is also, I think, worthy of just mentioning is also that Microsoft have really ramped up their AI focus over the last 3 years. From 2021, there has been a significant amount of innovation within both its Azure AI and machine learning offerings. And particularly the introduction of Copilot has really revolutionized, I think, how businesses are starting to approach AI, because it makes advanced data science and machine learning capabilities much more accessible and intuitive for a broader range of users. And we'll be taking you through just how accessible and intuitive Copilot is in a couple of minutes. So by seamlessly integrating AI-powered assistance into everyday workflows, Copilot has enhanced productivity, sped up the ability to generate insights from operations, and allowed organizations to start to deploy intelligent applications at scale. So this, I think, really is why Microsoft's leadership in the AI and data science space has really kind of re-emerged. So I think they're definitely one of the more interesting companies around in this space, but they're definitely not alone. So in terms of Nordic recent activity within the Nordics, in terms of investment, which is also, you know, a good indicator of interest and direction in AI. So four events to talk about here. So Peltarion in Sweden, an AI company, were acquired at the beginning of the year, I think it was February, by a gaming company called King for $100 million. And King acquired Peltarion in order to enhance their game design and player engagement using deep learning technology. So King are looking to expand into AI-driven gaming, and through that to leverage the personalized experiences that AI tech can deliver. In March, the Finnish AI lab Silo raised 50 million euros from VCs and public funding to expand its AI capabilities. They're focused on industrial grade AI solutions in sectors such as manufacturing and autonomous vehicles. And they have a particular interest in edge computing and autonomous systems. So definitely an interesting company to watch. Corti in Denmark are focusing on emergency medical services, incorporating real-time patient data and integrating those into public healthcare systems. And then lastly, here in Norway, Boost raised a significant round in February to focus on virtual agents for customer service. So a variety of different themes here, but all of them are at the forefront of AI innovation. And over the last 3 months, the pace of acceleration globally has really sped up. NVIDIA and Microsoft, I'm sure you saw, announced a joint $800 million investment to develop next generation hardware, which has been optimized for multi-agent AI systems. And we'll talk a little bit about what those are today. And Mistral are developing autonomous AI systems for the finance sector. So focusing on real-time decision-making in trading and portfolio management, and then integrating those with cloud platforms such as Azure OpenAI to automate financial services and decision-making around those. Runway AI is an interesting company. They are developing multimodal AI tools which integrate with Microsoft Studio and Azure OpenAI. And they are looking to develop multimedia content using agents in industries such as marketing and entertainment. So focusing very much on kind of personalization in both of those areas. And then last week, there was probably one of the biggest seed rounds of all time. There was a $1 billion seed round, which was targeted at a spin out from OpenAI. Their chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, raised $1 billion to develop safe AI systems that are designed to basically focus on concerns around AI safety and the potential risks of AI. So some interesting themes here, and I think there's a global shift basically towards scaling agent AI systems, and these will become increasingly autonomous, particularly within areas such as finance, cloud infrastructure, and creative industries. So I think all of these developments underscore the growing economic significance of autonomous AI technologies and their potential to revolutionize both operational efficiency and customer engagement. So I'm going to launch the first of our poll questions now, and I hope you'll take some time to answer. And we'll refer back to these results during the meeting. So I'm going to move on now to talk about really how we get into AI from the point of view of an organization. What do organizations really do? There is a view by a famous organizational scientist that an organization exists to solve problems and make decisions. And they do this by processing questions and providing answers to those questions. So it's a very reductionist view of what an organization does, but at the same time, I think there's a certain truth to this. So decision-making is really the core activity then of an organization. And what we're seeing is, this is James March, who proposed this idea of what an organization is, that it's really an information processing system. So two things to say here, that automation and AI are really enhancing this whole process. So AI is turbocharging both questions and answers through low and no code AI tools, such as Microsoft 365 Copilot, but also through more advanced agent-like AI solutions. So where you have intelligent agents that can handle complex workflows, making autonomous decisions, and integrating with different systems. Also the ability of agents to offer predictive analytics and insights, acting without reference to human input. So I can see from the poll that, thank you for answering that, 68% of us are just starting to explore AI tools, and that I think is to be expected, and it's good to have a sense of where you are. But equally, there are around a third who are now actively using Copilot and other AI solutions. So I think that's very encouraging. And of course, I think within those 68% just starting to explore AI tools, I'm sure a lot of the people within that group are also getting hands-on with different tools. So very interesting, thank you for that. Now I'm going to move on to introduce Morten, who will talk us through some of the aspects of Microsoft Copilot 365 and position it really as part of an evolutionary journey within AI that starts with AI models and moves on to AI agents. And that's a theme we'll return to in different ways throughout this meeting today. So, Morten, would you like to take us through this this slide?
Sure. So yeah, I think we talked about the setup today, going from kind of more like a user close solutions to the high tech, really deep dive infrastructure that David is going to talk about later. But when I when I kind of come to a point where we're starting discussing AI, I guess this is kind of where we start out. We are looking at the business, looking at how can our users and how can business become like an AI driven organization. That's we do meet a lot of clients these days that as kind of techies, you always struggled finding the attention of people higher up in the organization, the CXOs. What we're experiencing now, which is kind of amazing for us, is that the board of directors and everyone in the company will actually sit down and spend time learning how to be AI driven and how to incorporate AI into their business. And I think this talk here talks a little bit about now how that is possible and what we're actually trying to achieve. But coming from the user side, we're going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the start of it all for many, which is Microsoft 365 Copilot, which it's what I'm using, what I guess all the panelists here are using, probably, hopefully, a lot of the people on the call are using. And then when does that kind of stop, and when do we need to kind of move into more complex AI to get the icing on the cake, if you can call it that, on some of these scenarios. But for me, which couldn't, I talked to the guys yesterday saying I kind of quit at basic. That was what I did. I couldn't code my way out of anything. But the no code, low code solution, that's actually where a lot of us are coming from. And Copilot Studio that we're going to talk about, with it actually it even had the name Code-Pilot in the beginning. It actually came from Power Virtual Agents, so it was kind of based on the whole Power User low code no code platform. But sometimes you get to a certain point, you need to do other things, and then we're going to kind of boost that over to the more advanced AI solutions, which I think Joshua is going to kick us off with. And I just added this just as an example of why are we here even talking about that. You mentioned, Russell, that we got into this pretty early. I actually figured out I've now been working with this more than 1.5 years. That was before it was even called Copilot. We just heard some rumors about it. I think it's fun that Microsoft has moved to the top of the quadrant, but we also have to be aware that some of that was actually a huge investment into OpenAI. So they spent, I think it was $100 million just buying, shares into to OpenAI to get their hands on this technology, and they have really put it to good use. They've put it into, Copilot for Microsoft 365, which just changed the name last week when they released Wave 2. So now it's Microsoft 365 Copilot. But we've been doing, introduction setting, awareness sessions, webinars, seminars, and also running pilots for way over 50 customers now in the Nordics. And we also see that with that comes then also the need to do more Azure OpenAI. We have our own product called GPT Agents that we developed very early when this kind of started to take off, and how we can actually build on that in total. So yes, this is kind of our credentials a little bit for talking about that. So, but let's move on, and talk a little bit about co-pilots based on this. But first, I think just quick poll question. I think we can do this pretty quickly. Are you using or implementing Microsoft 365 Copilot already? So either is said not yet, but planning to, currently in pilot, fully implemented. I doubt we'll see very many there, but hopefully some. And I'm hoping we're not going to see too many no plans to use Copilot. Let's give people a minute to vote there.
Well, we have 15% fully implemented, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting, actually. I guess when we say fully implemented, I guess that also depends what we mean by fully implemented. If we mean making it available to users, some are saying yes, everyone can now use Copilot, but then they're probably talking about the free one. When we're talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's a licensed version. I guess everyone now knows it costs $30 a user a month, which is what many are now looking into because it's connected. Well, we'll get back to that. So,
great. I think we've got some indicative data there, so that's really really interesting.
Yep. Can you share some of the data? I'm not up seeing it right now. So
absolutely. So 18%. Are you using or implementing Microsoft 365 Copilot? Is the question. 18% not yet, but planning to. 65% currently in pilot phase. 15% fully implemented, and 3% no plans to use Copilot.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's I can just share that. I sometimes get the kind of the question, should we be looking into Copilot for 365? Do we need to kind of start looking into it? And my response is basically, well, do you have any choice? To be honest, first of all, looking into the future, I don't think Microsoft is going to say that, hey, you're going to have two ways of doing this. It's going to be without an AI assistant in the Office package or with an Office assistant. So my biggest guess is 2 years from now, no one's going to even talk about Copilot because it's just going to be an integral part of everything we do every day. It's like saying, hey, you can still buy a car, but you don't have a lane assistance, or you don't have a automatic braking, or you don't have dashboard cams. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a car that everyone drives with all these features available. But if you start with the Microsoft 365 Copilot, the first one who really, I would say, took off. And why did it take off? Well, first of all, people need an assistant. They need something to ask questions, search for all the information they have. So just having that personal assistant you can talk to, extract information, work with that. You also use the generative AI to produce something, going into the creative process. That's extremely powerful. And it's quite fun, because when I say, should you do that? And people say, well, we don't have any plans for AI. And then Microsoft has started, looking into, just looking at the traffic. How many people are actually bringing their own AI? Bring your own AI. Just consider that a moment into the office, and we're talking, numbers over 80%. So it's people are actually using these tools. They're using ChatGPT, and they're then probably, if they're not paying for it, they're using it at an unsafe way. But people are adopting this pretty quickly. And the good thing about Microsoft 365 Copilot is that tool is available for you inside your apps. So in other words, you don't have to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, create a presentation, and by the way, create a script for me so I can run that script afterwards in PowerPoint to create a presentation. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Here I can go to PowerPoint to say, hey, make a presentation based on something, based on either a document or a topic I want to discuss. And it creates that presentation inside the tool you're already working with. Like and it's a bit fun that we're not kind of in a Teams meeting right now, which I'm guessing a lot of our participants here are normally doing meetings in. But just sitting in Teams, getting using the transcript and getting a summary, a minutes of meeting automatically with all our actions and all our decisions and everything. That's extremely powerful. It saves a lot of time. I normally say that, if you don't do this correctly, you're going to buy a pretty fancy, expensive icon. But if you do it correctly and you start saving time, it's going to be the easiest business case you've ever written. But the fun thing about this one, compared to going, on the internet and asking questions, is this is connected to Microsoft Graph. And that's the first huge benefit we get. And what is Microsoft Graph? Well, basically, it's all your documents inside of Microsoft 365 that you have access to. So all the information stored in SharePoint, in OneDrive, which is again SharePoint, your Teams, your emails, your calendar items, everything you have inside of Microsoft 365 already linked with your permissions to that content. So if Damien shared a document with me, I can find it. If Joshua didn't share another document with me, I will not find it even if I'm using Copilot. The last thing, and this is kind of the evolution of the discussion we're having with customers, it's you get to a point where Microsoft is saying, hey, and you probably also need to look into Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio is actually not a part of Microsoft 365 Copilot, but they have made this available on internal data for internal use and to create these bots if you have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Okay, so in other words, it gives you immediate access to creating specialized bots or solutions to ask queries against the sources that you specify. So, and that's kind of where it starts. So, but if you go to the next slide, just quickly, how does this work? Well, it's pretty simple actually. A user normally would kind of go to his inbox or go to SharePoint or go someone else and start searching for stuff. So you would go and say, hey, I know that Russell here, he mentioned something about an offer for someone. And then I'm actually going to go to my mailbox and say, hey, didn't he send me something? And I'm going to search for your name and I'm going to add, offer, and I'm not going to find anything. And then I'm going to go to Teams because probably we talked about that in Teams. And then I'm going to search for offer there and I'm not finding anything. So what's then the difference if you use Copilot for this? Well, first of all, you're going to ask Copilot and the question, and that question is going to be sent to the LLM, the large language model. And just think of this for those that are not that techie, and believe me, we're going to go tech deep dive pretty soon. But think of that as asking ChatGPT a question that I'm pretty sure a lot can relate to. So you're asking that question to ChatGPT. There's a huge difference though. This is not the ChatGPT on the web outside. This is an LLM that Microsoft has played inside your data boundary for your tenant. So the query goes to the LLM. It's then redefined, actually put on the different things, uses natural language and everything, and a refined new query is sent back to the orchestrator. Then something also that you need to mention happens. The query is then deleted. Nothing is saved by the LLM. It doesn't use this to train anything else. Everything is deleted. But remember, it does not have access to your data. That's the next part. Then it actually goes to your data and asks the questions, hey, I'm looking for an offer that Russell mentioned, but with the natural language, it could actually not be that I'm looking for the word offer. I'm looking for the word RFP, or even in Norwegian, tilbud. It looks at the different ways of referring to an offer, and then it actually looks into my data, which is then my Microsoft graph. And then it also uses the skills that I'm building that we will get to later. But this is kind of the magic that happens. And just by doing this, by finding the information across Outlook, across my files, across Teams, that is just magic in itself. It will definitely find that information for you. But if you go to the next slide, this is also one of the things we're seeing is that users are then sitting on top, they're working with Copilot. And remember, there's not one Copilot that's called Microsoft 365 Copilot. There's a Copilot in Teams. There's a Copilot there. You have it for chat. You have or BizTalk, we call it now. And then you have one in Word, one in PowerPoint, etc. And then you have all the other outside Copilots. There's over 100 in total now, like Copilot for BizTalk, Copilot for Fabric, etc. But the one we're seeing here, users are using this business chat or in Outlook and in Word, and they're asking these questions that goes to this orchestrator, and it connects to the data they have. And this is also what we call grounding. So what I can do is if I'm on the work part and I ask a question, it goes to my work documents. But I can also go in and I can say, hey, I'm looking for some updated information. So also go to the web and do a search for me. That's something you need to then turn on. it's not grounding in that, but then it's actually also sending that as a query outside. So as an example, if we're grounding it on web, you will ask the LLM for the old data. So in other words, who won the last European Song Contest? You will then get the response that was some years ago. But if I'm saying who won it this year and I'm actually turning on the web search, it will probably find the one who won in May, right? So we're doing that, and we're using all the different models that you will talk about later, and the skills and everything we have, and we're basing it on actually the GPT models. So for Omni now being the last one, and this is also constantly changing with Microsoft. Microsoft now giving us an updated version of the GPT model that's behind this. So this will basically make you a small super user for yourself. But, and I'll just going to mention that very quickly. The new users, the AI users coming out now, they're incredible at using this. We had another webinar. We talk about adoption and where we are. And we can just leave it at the other slide. So it's actually them going in, working, and playing around with this. But one thing there's two things that's important. One thing, the first one is when people start playing around with Copilot, they're going to quickly say, yes, I see that I can find the information, and in some cases I can get it to do something for me. But why can't I then say, well, take this information and perform something? So actually, I want it to do something for me, not just, if I say, find all the information that references this project from Joshua, it will find that for me. But then if I complete that, I'm saying, hey, take all those documents, put them into a folder and share it with Damien, it's not going to do that for me yet. And that's where some of the Copilot's agents come in. And the difference between these two models, Microsoft kind of, this is their slides, they kind of reused this. But the concept is that we're also then using some triggers, and we're looking at this concept as an agent. In other words, I can create an AI agent that will not just do something for me, but it will actually reason and do things automatically based on the knowledge it sees in the documents. So if we go to the next slide, this is kind of the evolution of how we're looking at agents. Right now, we are at the left side of this. We're using it to retrieve information. We're grounding it in different things we're seeing. We're reasoning, summarizing, asking questions, hopefully using it as a kind of an assistant. Then we're moving into actions where we can actually say, hey, if this happens, we can do an action. Very simple thing. You can take your Copilot Studio and connect it to something. So if a customer asks a question, can I order a product? You say, yes, you can order a product. You can even follow up with, do you want to order that product, or do you want to book that appointment? They go yes, and you send it off actually into an appointment. So we can already do that for simple tasks. The right side of this picture is where we're heading quickly now. And that is the autonomous part of this, where we can actually say, hey, I have set up a bot that actually looks at what's happening and then based on some rules, takes some automatic actions. So in other words, it's like a virtual assistant you have put in there that looks at everything, picks up what probably a human should have picked up itself, and then takes action based on that. It doesn't necessarily say, hey, you didn't pay your monthly fee, so I'm canceling your subscription. But it will probably say, hey, here is something that's happening, and it's informing someone on the inside or sending something to the end user to inform them that they need to do something. The next slide has a couple of examples on how this is done. So if I did, an IT help desk agent, I said, how do I connect to the corporate network? That would be a pretty simple, and we have created these bots, just pointing to some instructions, probably some documents you have stored on the IT's SharePoint site, and you could just connect Copilot Studio to that documentation, and it will ask questions. It will use still the LLM the structure and the reasoning it has to answer those questions. We have a pretty good example ourselves. We connected it to our quality system. And then I can actually go in and say, hey, what is the role of a Scrum Master? And it will actually reason and figure out what I'm looking for and then pull out the correct data. You can do a project tracker agent, but then you move into something such as a budget management agent. So you're saying review outstanding open POs and begin financial planning. In other words, it's taking some results and then it's starting something, or it's even informing someone. The advanced side of this is that the agent has identified something, and then it actually triggers either some other agents or it triggers it to a flow that starts. So it's actually sitting there by itself. And we have a couple of examples. For instance, like if you have, let's say you have a way of collecting surveys from users. And then, a lot of people are asking, how happy are you with your solutions? And everyone's asking, or replying that, yes, very happy, but I think, delivery was pretty bad this time. That will probably drown in all the surveys you have. But the agent will then look at all of these and then pick up that, hey, suddenly a lot of people are complaining about deliveries. And that creates a signal. And then you can say, hey, I'm actually going to take some action on that and actually inform the people on the right side to actually fix this problem. Okay, make sense? Yeah. So the other thing, we're for doing these simple ones, you can go to the next slide, Russell. For me, again, not being the one who loves to dig into Visual Studio and Azure Fabric, etc. We can do this with amazing steps just with Copilot Studio for the end users part. You can actually use Copilot in Copilot Studio. So what do we mean by that? Well, when you start a new bot now, just explain to the bot what you want it to do, or explain to Copilot Studio what you want it to do. And the Copilot part of that will actually say, hey, it looks like you want this kind of bot, and create it for you. The only thing you do is you go in and make a prompt that there's a lot of already ready built things. Say, I need a bot that answers questions and responds to them, for instance. And then they said, well, you have some instructions. Well, be polite. It's internal users, but be polite and also precise on what you're doing. But you can also, for makers, go out and do the Copilot Studio platform. And then if you get the responses, some of them will just out of the box be pretty okay on what you want. But of course, you can tune it and say, if a customer is asking about this, or if a user is asking about this, then do this trigger instead. So you have full access to actually, working and working with the model and everything else. But then we're quickly moving into the next part of that, because if you move to the next one, like I said, whereas I mentioned earlier that when they created Copilot Studio, it was actually the evolution of Power Virtual Agents. So it was, of course, then something that they wanted to do together with Power Platform and the whole dynamics back. And again, it's pretty powerful in itself. But remember that if you then start connecting data, that's the second next question we get. One is, can I have actions on what I want to do? But the other is, hey, this is wonderful. I love Copilot. I love Copilot Studio, but I have a lot of data stored somewhere else that I actually need access to. If it's the easy ones, you can go to Power Platform and say, hey, connect to CRM, connect to something else. I need to kind of connect this. There's even Copilot for sales, automatically goes into to Microsoft CRM. But this is where the real value for many lie. It's, we're already full in control of unstructured data, documents, and information in the Microsoft Graph. But most have a lot of information also stored somewhere else, either in structured data, in databases somewhere, or even in blob stores in Azure or what have you. And that's where it becomes interesting, because then we actually need to go in and connect to that data. And then we need to go in and secure the connection stores that data. And even more advanced, that Joshua is going to talk about later, how do you actually talk to that data, and how do you get the essence of what you're looking for? Because what we want to avoid is what we call hallucinations. In other words, we don't want to get the bad information, or the AI to give us the wrong information when we ask the response. So you can start with, just going to Copilot Studio, but if you go to the next slide, Russell, you'll see that, if that isn't enough for you, you can go to AI Builder. Now, this is just a cheat sheet that talks about, what can you actually do with this? Well, you can connect it to, process your documents. You can even process images. You can process text. And you can go there and you can actually work with your platform and actually connect to these different things. But if you need next level again, that's the next slide. You can move in and and go YOLO with Joshua, and you can actually say, hey, I'm going to actually go into the machine learning studio in Azure AI, and I'm not going to only work with the data and connect to the data, but I'm even going to control how I talk to the data, how I reason with the data, and you can even create your own LLMs. So in other words, it gives you full control of everything you do. But if you do that, and when you do that, if you go to the next slide, you can actually see that this is, and I'm so proud of this title, the circle of life. But the thing is, I could start my kind of problem in Copilot Studio, and I can sit there and say, hey, I need to do something. I need to connect to some data. Well, my bot will then, I can go into AI Builder, and I can get the data I want and connect it. And then I'm saying, hey, I still need to take it to the next level. I need to go into AI and do that. But what I'm actually creating and what I'm setting up and what I'm building in Azure can even be then consumed afterwards by Copilot Studio. So as soon as Joshua has done something and created this wonderful new connection into the data I need, and with the right reasoning I need, I can then pull that information out into Copilot Studio, give it back to the low coders, and they can sit and work with that same data. So this is definitely the circle of life. Yeah.
Okay.
Another question.
Yes, just let's put another question out there. So, what is your biggest AI skills challenge? So, incoming poll, coming at you now. Okay, so to that question, what's your biggest AI skills challenge? There are 5 answers. First is understanding AI basics. The second is integrating AI with existing systems. The third is data preparation and management. The fourth is AI model selection and fine-tuning. And the fifth is ethical AI implementation. So we're starting to see some clear patterns coming in now. Just give you another 10 seconds or so. We're 70% voted. Okay, so to summarize, I'm going to close the poll and share. So we're seeing 36%. One of the biggest challenges is data preparation and management, which ties in nicely with what Joshua is going to be talking about. The second biggest area is integrating AI with existing systems, and organizations are these complex question and answer machines with many different systems covering many different areas of organizational functionality. So how to integrate AI with existing systems is clearly an area of challenge for many of us, and finding solutions for that is an urgent priority.
I'm
So
guessing, Russell, if we
API
even
skills, infrastructure skills. Sorry, Morten.
no, I was just thinking if we even said integrating AI with existing systems or data, that's one of the really high ones we see out there. Yeah,
For sure, absolutely. Okay.
We'll take a closer look when we get to infrastructure for this as well, because this is core to the infrastructure question.
exactly.
It is, absolutely. Very good. So thanks for your participation again. So we're going to change gears a little bit now and move beyond the kind of Microsoft sort of safe harbor and move out into Azure OpenAI applications. I'll just lead into Joshua's piece with just a kind of a recap on this. I think is one way of understanding the spectrum of AI capabilities that we're now in. So we have basically the static AI models, which in many cases are foundation models. Sorry, let me just, Damien's just reminded me to clear the poll. I will. Clearing the poll. That's cleared, right, Damien? Yep, good. Thanks. So we're looking at foundation models, few-shot prompting, and reasoning AI models. So these are models. So they're based on kind of extracting information from reference sources. So there's then a shift to agents, where agents are able to combine a certain amount of reasoning and interaction in order to extract information from one or more sources. And the next step on from that is, I guess, really where the market currently now is, which is the introduction of multi-agent systems. And these are agents that can collaborate with other AI agents to solve complex tasks where each agent has a particular role to play in, for example, a multi-step process. So examples could be, automating a supply chain, for example, or coordinating a drone fleet. So those are examples of collaborative AI use cases. So we're moving into a future which will be increasingly about autonomous AI and self-learning agents that are capable of ingesting kind of feedback data from operations and then optimizing the way in which they work both alone and also together with other agents. And the ultimate case here is autonomous self-driving vehicles, but also potentially the ability of cities and kind of urban infrastructure to become much more self-regulating and self-managing. So AI models excel in well-defined single task problems and tasks that do involve reasoning, but within a limited framework or set of sources. And AI agents take problem solving one step further by introducing interaction, collaboration, and increasingly autonomy. So agents are suitable for complex, real-time, multi-step tasks that need decision-making in dynamic environments. So just a kind of a recap on some of the things we've been talking about. And now let's do another poll question. So the question this time is, are you using or implementing Azure OpenAI? So we have nearly 20% are actively implementing projects. So we'd love to hear more about that and your experiences there. And 2/3 are currently exploring options. and 10% are already using in production. So that's also very impressive. Very good. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you for sharing. So here's where we ended up. So 60% not yet, but exploring options. 20% actively implementing projects, and 10% already using in production, and 10% in planning and preparation. Is that more or less what you would have expected, Morten, Damien, Joshua? Or are you surprised by how many are actively implementing?
I'm not surprised. It's good.
Yeah, I think it's good.
It's a healthy position.
Yep. Okay. Let's I'm now going to introduce Joshua, who is going to take us further into the world of OpenAI. Joshua.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was listening Morten, and I usually listen guys who are talking AI and agents, and thing that something knacks in my neck is that always talking about magic, and that there's just the arrow and a connector, and also that Microsoft is talking about co-pilots and they're just doing and finding things autonomously and everything is working. But the real case is that it's a little bit maybe more complicated, but I wouldn't say even so if you understand the basics behind it. And my point in here is fully to show you how you can kind of take full control of your AI applications. And the co-pilots are nice, but still they leave some questions. For example, how your data is stored, especially if it's unstructured data, and then how you actually do the magic part where you retrieve the exact document you want to have for your LLM, so it can give you an answer and that it's not going to hallucinate. And the common misconceptions usually when I talk with the customers is that they always think that the LLM just do it, again, more than I blame you, by magic, and it's just wrong. Or they think the LLM is going in and read all the documents from some random place and then spits the answer. And yeah, that's just wrong. It doesn't work like that. And even if it would work like that, it would be freakishly expensive because tokens are costing. Every time you feed in something, it's cost Microsoft thanks. The LLM spits out something, Microsoft thanks again. So yeah, and the thing what I want to tell you for right now, first, where we usually focus on these kind of projects where we use Azure OpenAI and actually do these kind of RAG models or agents. And also I'm gonna go quickly through how we actually work with our customers and how it's gonna look like if you're planning to work with us. And I think it's good always go through this really simple image of RAG, retrieval augmented generation architecture, and especially focus on the information flow when the user makes a question. And even if it's an agent, autonomous agents, we still have to do these kind of steps in order to get the right answer. And the basic thing is that if we start from the left corner, the user writes the prompt, but then actually comes to the hard part. We have to first retrieve the document from somewhere, and this is the magic we usually not talking about. And this is actually the place we probably play 90, 95, even more % of our time when we are doing this kind of Azure AI applications for our customers. And the hard part is especially when many people and companies have these unstructured data that's just sitting somewhere, and we should find the right document. And based on that document that we can find, we finally generate the LLM. So from this retrieval augmented generation model, we actually focus mainly just retrieval part, and the generation part, when we have actually found the right context from the database and feed it to the LLM, then it's pretty easy and actually pretty powerful, and then you can use a little bit of prompt engineering or somewhat kind of tricks to make your answer a little bit better. And the things, or the thing that is actually the challenge in here in this kind of information flow is that the user can ask anything. Usually they can have a chat, and before we can actually give the answer, we have to translate this anything question to good fetch from the database. And there's many things usually we do when we go to do these kind of things. They contain starts actually from how we structure even these kind of semantic webs, semantic indices, and how we pre-process the documents when we are feeding them into the semantic indices, and how we implement security filters, and even how we pre-process the user prompt so it actually fits better to the semantic index what we have just built. And a lot of it is that we actually check the documents, and then we talk the customer, and we try to find, for example, document hierarchies. And we especially want to talk with the end users in these kind of scenarios, because they usually know, like, oh yeah, I have usually this kind of document, and then I fetch this kind of document. And if we know these kind of knowledges, we can already build, for example, the semantic indices based on this kind of structures. So my point, what I'm trying to say in here, because the guys said don't go too technical. I could go, but they said don't go, is that there's a lot of things we actually want to do before we are doing anything related to prompt engineering, and we have to think them through in order to find the right document. And if you want to talk with me later more technically, I think, Russell, is that right? People can ask just questions. You can ask me almost anything related to this. But the next thing is also, you can change the slide, how we work with the customers. And this is also what we have found based on the first customers we have done things. The most important for things, first, we talk to end user from the day one. Usually I see with the customers, there's some kind of project manager, and these kind of guys, we have to talk with them. But the real problem in here is that they don't actually know what the end user is exactly doing. And we usually want to talk them from day one and really see what they are doing and really ask them questions, because we are also coding, so we don't have any restrictions, for example, that some buttons are missing. We can kind of make a lot of tricks in there, and just that we can find the data to large language model. The second really important thing is that we usually ask the customer to get us a small test group. And this is because we want to have feedback, and we have to do iterations before we want to launch the application inside of the company, because otherwise it's going to be disappointment. If you just implement something, like let's say we put a semantic index and upload your documents in there, it's not so simple. People will be disappointed at that point. We have to iterate it a while. The third thing is actually what we are following. We are following the feedback, but especially the accuracy percentage. And it tells us like how good the answers are. And this is really good for us, but also for the customer. So it's easy to solve, like, all right, based on your answers, this is the accuracy percentage right now of your application. And then finally, we just iterate these things until the customer is satisfied and we have got to our target accuracy percentage. Yeah, you guys, I have to blame you a little bit. You told me don't go too technical, and it's right now it's in here that talk, but I highly ask you guys to ask me questions if you want to hear something more.
Yeah. I mean, Joshua has some real world experience working on some very interesting customer cases. So we can definitely arrange contact either towards the end of today, if time allows, or you can follow up afterwards. Let's move on now, because time is actually moving a little faster than I thought. Let's have another quick poll. Where is AI's biggest potential in your business, do you see? Quick poll. Very interesting. Customer service and marketing and sales are leading at the moment. I'm guessing that that may have something to do with the ability of AI to personalize cases and offers. So very interesting. Supply chain optimization, also an important case. I've worked quite a bit on supply chain optimization myself. So there's definitely an important role for agents there. And product development. It's a very broad area. So probably to get more into that, we'd need to ask them more questions about exactly which aspect of product development. But I think really some good responses. So thank you for that. Just share those. There we are. And now I'm going to accelerate forward to Damien, who is going to now take us into really the role of infrastructure in all of this, or particularly with regard to Azure OpenAI. Damien.
Russell, thank you. We can switch back as far as the slides again. So we've spent a fair amount of time listening to both Martin, Joshua, and Russell talk a little bit about how beautiful and how brilliant this AI stuff is. But I think the reality is that there's been a whole lot of hype and a whole lot of feeling of magic going on. And looking at the most recent Gartner hype curve, I think the market tends to agree. Most people that are going out, trying out their GTP agents are coming back after they've played with it for a little while, saying it's not all that. There's work and effort needed to try and get us into a point that we can actually use this. And that leads us really into a couple of different questions, and it also reflects back on some of the polls that you've been answering over the last hour, which I want to say thank you for. And it aligns pretty clearly with the fact that AI is yet another tool in our arsenal to make our business processes better. And the question really now is, how do we get past all of this high level of expectations, figure out exactly what is real, and how do we get to a point that we can actually make this productive in our organizations. And even as in the last poll, it kind of goes down to the question of where in this whole ecosystem that we run as our businesses can we actually implement AI technology stacks. So we have to try and figure out how do we actually get into a productive workflow. Joshua was probably closest to some of the real challenges as we get into the business plumbing to try and figure out how do I actually take a lot of the actual IP that we run, build a level of trust that I'm not actually selling my business out to some of the big players that own these models, and effectively try and come up with a solution that makes this process operate for us and for our business. And that really puts a strong question on to how does this magic actually really work? So Russell, if you flow forward, please.
Sure.
I think the reality is that this is not an evolution. It is not magic. Gin AI that we are essentially here today as a result of hasn't basically just been somebody pulled back the curtains in 2022 and says, hey, world, we're just about to turn you upside down. And the reality is they did do exactly that. And I think the hype curve obviously lives to that point. But what we are standing back now looking at is that this has been built over many, many years, nearly 50 years at this point, of actual history. And the bottom line is all of this is simply machine learning. At the end of the day, we are dealing with ML technology stacks. The only change that has really come to us at this point is that it has been made far more accessible to the world. Up until this point, we were looking at people that were essentially mathematicians, data scientists, and far higher skilled than I am. And as a result of those, we often come across organizations that were using the AI technology stacks, but for very specific scenarios and with a very specialized team to make sure they were coming into place. Most common that we've come across them has been essentially large enterprises and universities. But today we're sitting down just talking to just about every other organization across the planet, from the local hairdresser right through to, well, you guys. And AI is part of our day process. But it leaves us with a whole lot of questions. And those questions are, how do I actually go beyond the accessibility that Copilot has given us? Because Copilot absolutely has been the drug to get it onto this wheel. So if I get you to slide one more time, Russell, please. Microsoft have essentially jumped that bandwagon, and we've got into this Copilot. You can just see a snapshot of just 1 year, 12-month period, and you can see the amount of drops that Microsoft made alone just in this single area. So that kind of gives you the fact that there is a lot moving and a lot of happenings going on. But if we move on to the next slide, we get a little bit of a grounding and start to realize that this is not new. It is not magic. It is an evolution. And most importantly, if you look at this, the drawing here essentially identifies the fact that we are built on top of a machine learning platform at the end of the day. And all of those things have been around for many, many years. And specifically, even as services in Azure, they've been around for a long time. We simply use different names. We were using bots and cognitive services and training these things to do very specific jobs. And really, the question kind of comes out, if we are building something for Gen AI technology stacks, what does that mean? How do I actually build that into my business? What does this need? And I suppose the first reality is it doesn't need anything different from what you already have as a fabric. We are building the same thing. We are just using slightly different tools to get to the net results. And with that in our mind, it's easy to start figuring out what the foundation models should look like and how we move forward. Russell, if I get you to go again, we'll flow through these pretty quickly. The first image I want you to think about is your destination. And like every destination, it can be from something small to something super complicated or something huge. And in the case of these models, that's exactly what's happened. We have come from a scenario that we've been building ML models following processes that are very clear and very easy to understand. If you go back just 5 years and you look at something as simple as a cognitive service and you wanted to identify, was an image that I'm presenting to you a flower or not a flower, we would basically hand a model a set of pictures 10, 15 pictures and basically say, this is a flower, this is a flower, this is a flower, and another couple of pictures saying, this is not a flower. And once we had trained the basic model of what the difference between a flower and not a flower, we then moved into a normal developer flow where we essentially turned around and says, okay, here's a random image. Is it a flower? Yes or no? The AI, the cognitive service in this case, should come back and hopefully say, yes, this is a flower. But if it does not, we tell it that, I'm sorry, this is not an actual flower. And that becomes a learning process. These things get bigger and better. What is Gen AI? It's pretty much exactly the same thing. The only difference is I'm not handing it 10 or 15 flowers. I'm handing it billions of documents. And I'm not asking it one question. Is this a flower? Yes or no? I'm putting in multiple lines of actual text and basically what we as developers would have turned around and says, these are parameters to my functions. So as we built our models a little bit better, should I bring a brolly? Is it likely to rain? So we've been doing this predictive type stuff. The Gen AI scenarios essentially have moved from having 10, 15 different parameters in the inputs to, I think the latest ones are up at 70 billion. So this introduces a pile of challenges around what are we going to build, and we're not going to be building these Gen AI models, that's for sure, unless we are the Metas of the world or OpenAI or whoever the case may be. So we've got to start a foundation somewhere else, and that implies that for whatever we build at this point, we must have the right foundation for the solution we're building. Now in Azure, as we take this journey, this actually isn't rocket science either. Funny enough, we've been doing this for as long as we've been doing the ML stuff. And the beautiful thing here is that when we built that beautiful model to figure out if it's a flower or not, I ended up with basically a simple thing. It was called an API. And we basically said, I'm going to upload you a picture. You're going to send me back a response. Flower, not flower. And if we think about how we talk to these Gen AI models today, sure, you're talking to it through Copilot or you're talking through it through some nice web interface, but the developer that pulls back that from behind, he's talking to an API. And he basically says, I'm passing in you my question or my prompt, that can be an image, and that API hands me back an answer. So nothing's changed. The plumbing is exactly the same. The only difference is the amount of data I can pass into the API and the amount of data I get back out, the complexity of those questions. So the foundations we're going to build matches what it is that we're trying to actually achieve. Russell, roll again, please. So what we want to do is basically figure out how can we actually evolve. And basically, we're going to follow all the standard processes we've always done. We're going to try and build infrastructure that follows cutting edge innovation, stands secure, and is agile. That's not new. That's how we build infrastructure in the cloud today. And that's how we're going to continue building infrastructure in the cloud tomorrow. Again, Russell, in this case, we're going to use accelerators, helpers, knowledge, experience, and all of the above to essentially build the term of a landing zone. We are building an architecture on a foundation that is somewhat well known at this point. It will need to be fine-tuned just like everything for any other business, but the building blocks that are necessary for us to actually be successful here, they stand exactly the same. We need to address where the data is, we need to address where the customers are, and we need to address where the processing is going to be. And the constraints and the ISO regulations and everything else that stand between us and building the solution, they don't change. And there's a process for it, funny enough. Again, Russell, please. And this process is Microsoft's Cloud Adoption Framework. And we're sitting today to demonstrate what is in the ready stage of this. What should this landing zone concept look like? What are the guidelines that we need to actually start figuring out? Can I actually go and build these things and get you accelerated, get the developers back in and address that key question? How do I integrate this AI into my business process? And if you take those 3 letters, API, and go to the developers and say, okay, treat Gen AI as an API. Now, how can I introduce that into my business process? The discussion will change rapidly. Go back to Martin and say, okay, Martin, you've got this brilliant co-pilot, it's working. I've modeled up with Joshua all my private data into this API. Can I consume it? Yes. No, maybe, no, might. That is a very clear, very positive, very definite yes, by following the same processes we do for everything we build, run in the cloud. Ready is what we're going to look at right now. And then you move into an operations flow, the life cycle, as Martin liked to pun a little bit earlier on, where we secure, manage, and govern that operations. Russell, one more time, please. So what are we doing? We're following the standard design principles. Again, nothing new here. We are using subscriptions to democratize exactly what we're doing. We're building them in the concept of blast zones. So we want to make sure that the first time around, we're not actually going to feed this real data. We're not going to actually risk our business as we figure out how do we write the API, how do we test the application, just like any other app you'd write. We'll isolate it, get it that working in the sandbox, move it through its process into your dev, and then bring that then through to the production line. Let that be using feature releases, let that be using environment releases, whatever process you run, that process doesn't change. We just simply need to make sure we bring these toolings along. So this then implies that the pillars for security, for governance, and for running absolutely all of our infrastructure stand exactly the same when we look at these AI models and using tools like Microsoft's AI Studio. I get you to go one more time, please, for me, Russell. So what we're going to look at are a couple of Azure landing zone design areas. And specifically, we're going to lock in on the actual solution that is for OpenAI. So Russell, again, if you flow forward for me, you can probably spin this one a deck or two. So what are these landing zones? They're simply an architectural guidance, a reference architecture, an implementation that automates the process of actually getting your infrastructure up at scale, repeatable, and following your best practices. That simply means then that I have got two different developers that have two completely different ideas of how to attack this. We give them that infrastructure. They can stand it up in about 7 minutes. And then from there, they can start actually doing what they need to do, which is build their code and fail building their code and start again, because that's essentially how we're going to learn. And that's effectively what we're going to demonstrate in the next few minutes to you as we walk through these scenarios. But I do want to emphasize that this approach is the same approach we take for everything we're deploying. It doesn't matter if today's topic is about OpenAI, if tomorrow's topic is about Azure Virtual Desktop, if the day after we're having a topic about data landing zones, the approach is absolutely the same every single time. The architectural guidance and reference processes, we deliver them and work the exact same way. And these are reference guides. They are not saying you must do this. You will fine tune these for your business and for your organization to turn on the processes that match where your maturity is on the scale and help you actually evolve down to that best practice scenario. So in the context of time, Russell, I'm going to get you to scroll on to another slide or two. So the OpenAI landing zone is essentially the one we're going to focus on, specifically for helping make sure that we have generative solutions. The big picture that's on screen right now is basically following Microsoft's own guidance. No, we don't follow this 100%. Like everybody, we have opinions. Some of those opinions differ from how Microsoft build their stuff. But from a referencing perspective, what I want you to see here is that there are a couple of light blue boxes, 4 of them on the bottom of the screen. And each one of these essentially is responsible for a different part of your business operation. Starting on the left, we got management. Right next to it is connectivity. And beside that is AI. So each of these little boxes are little business units or divisions or teams within your IT infrastructure that are responsible for actually operating what is necessary for you to essentially work in the cloud in a very structured and mannerly way. these all work together. You can see little lines interconnecting where data flows between them. The network guys that you've always had, they secure your infrastructure. They're the connectivity team. The management team are responsible for making sure that everything has been monitored and governed and controlled. You have an identity team responsible for making sure that those people coming in and out of your environment are people you trust. And of course, if we have an AI environment, no genius needs to figure out what that one's for. Russell, if you don't mind, we'll scroll down again and we'll take a closer look at the AI one. So we can skip this one. These are just other reference infrastructures we've built, and we'll focus specifically on why we're doing this. So there's a couple of slides in this area, but what we're zooming in on is that bigger picture, and we're highlighting, circles have all slightly moved to the left, we're highlighting the different parts of the actual architecture. So for example, when we look at things like identity and access, you can see essentially that we're using the platform services that Microsoft offer, the same set of platform services that would be used for any other business application that you would be implementing. So in the case of identity access, we are using the standard RBAC infrastructures. We're using the access control lists for your services to make sure that they stay public or private or hybrid, depending on what's necessary. Russell, I'll get you to roll again, please. And you can see, essentially, we follow that same practice for all of the major pillars of governance, organizing and structuring, tagging to make sure that we have everything clearly identified for which business unit, which test environment, which developer is using stuff. So we can then take that, again, Russell, please, and apply it to what is necessary in order to make these essentially work. Similarly, from the perspective on what we're going to show in a moment, in the AI environment, there's a big red oval in the center there around VNet peering. This is the umbilical cord. This is your connectivity to your real world. And when we drop the sandbox scenario, we drop that connection. So essentially, we give you this isolated plateau to say, hey, let's build this API, let's give it some test data, but let's make sure this cannot get near anything else in our organization. So as Joshua goes through and he does his semantic indexing, all of that stuff is sitting inside that AI subscription. And you can have one or multiple of these for each of the different tests and sandboxes you're doing. And as you get to that level of confidence, then we bring the connections back in. We allow it to have access to your network to get to the data sources that are necessary, or make this publishable to your business and evolve the same process that you have always done for your pipelines for release and production validations and testing. Russell, I think because of time, we have a couple of more slides that follow these same pillars, as you can see here. But all we're basically saying is that the architecture is built to follow all of the standard governance and management operations. And most importantly, we follow a code first initiative for everything we deploy. It's the only way we can actually turn around and tell you consistently each time we're going to deliver. So I have about 60 seconds. So what I'll show you is behind the scenes, a little bit of what this looks like. So I'm going to take presenter off, Russell, if that's okay. Yep. And I'm just going to put a screen up. And I'm going to start where all of the real techie guys should start, right in the middle of the code view. So let me just see if I can actually do a presenter. I don't have presenter privileges yet, Russell.
Okay, sorry, let me just
pressure.
Okay, stop screen. Here we are, Damien. You should have presenter mode.
We want to take this opportunity while GoToWebinar is switching around here to again invite you guys to essentially reach out and follow up with us if there's something specific that you'd like to look at, want to talk a little bit more. But most importantly, what I'm about to share here, we are making available, as Russell said, to everybody. That's part of this webinar. Have I shared the right screen? So you should be seeing a code window.
Yes.
Yes, we are. Okay, so I'm here in a code environment. As always, everything we deploy around the environment is essentially written code first. It's our primary delivery mechanism for everything. In this case, we are choosing a code language that is Bicep, native to Azure. But the piece that's I'd like to highlight here is that the infrastructure is code. That implies then that the application, in this particular case, a chat application, and it is written in Node or TypeScript, that is also sitting inside this package, which implies that both the infrastructure team and the development team can coexist as they work together on actually implementing and delivering a solution. Now, the solution in this particular case is a reference architecture, a little bit more complicated than the one that we've just looked at on the screen for a few moments, because we've actually integrated everything that we believe is necessary in this implementation. So that means we are actually building out private networking. We're building out container registries. We're using web apps that deploy from containers. We're deploying API gateways to protect your OpenAI services, rate limiting, authorization. We have the data sources that are necessary for actually storing all of your pieces. And more importantly, as you'll see here, I have two environments deployed for my two developers in place. So as you can see, we can easily coexist these environments. And the nice piece is, because this is code, if I look at just a previous deployment to give you an idea of what's involved in this, the deployment started at, we'll scroll down, 8:43 this morning, finished at 8:49. Give you an idea just how quickly we stand up an environment. That's your infrastructure. And there is a lot of infrastructure clearly deployed here that gets you a production ready. It is actually production ready, but we're going to deliver to you non-connected, which implies this is non-production, but a sandbox environment. You can easily then VNet connect that, if necessary, to the rest of your production when you feel that confidence level or you want support and guidance. Because we're out of time, I'm not going to actually just show you a web app that actually talks to an AI. I think you've all seen the OpenAI demos that do exactly the same thing, but that's effectively what's deployed to this infrastructure. And as I mentioned again, this demo, if you're interested in taking and wrapping around into your environments, or just learning a little bit more of how to actually get the discussions going with your developers and integrating the Azure OpenAI stack and Studio into your application lifecycles and your existing infrastructure, we are here and we're ready.
Thank you very much, Damien.
Thank you.
Just, grabbing the presentation back. Excuse me. Sorry, folks. Let's just. Okay. That basically covers pretty much everything we wanted to talk to you today about. I don't think we've really got time to spend some time on this, but I do think, you know, the reason why anybody is putting time and effort into and budget into AI development is of course because we all, whatever organization we're in, we're working in some kind of a competitive context. And I think it's worth thinking about kind of, you know, what are the factors that you believe are going to be key to putting your organization in the place you want to be in terms of your operating context, even if you're part of a public sector organization or whether you're in the private sector. There is still a gap between capabilities today and where you want to be tomorrow. So think about the different factors that that are important to you. That basically concludes what it is that we wanted to present to you today, and we probably could have scheduled more time. I'm sorry about that. We have another webinar coming up on November the 6th, and here we're going to be looking at infrastructure for advanced data applications. So it'll be myself and Damien, and we'll be bringing in some subject matter experts from across the Innofactor Nordic group of experts. So we'll contact you to remind you of that upcoming webinar. So thank you very much from us. It's been great to have an opportunity to talk to you this morning, and hopefully you found this relevant and useful for where you are now and where you want to be tomorrow. So as Damien said, and as Joshua also said, and Morten, there will please do follow up with any questions, and we'll be happy to answer them one-to-one. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.